Have you ever struggled with your watercolour painting? It may be that you think it's taken you too long to paint or that you need a vast amount of colours. This can really knock your confidence if you're starting out as a watercolourist. I'm Campbell and welcome to my YouTube channel, The Wonders of Watercolour. I'm a freelance illustrator, artist and tutor, and every week I will bring you a brand new video tutorial as well as tips, tricks and hacks. This week I've chosen something that will give you really fast results with a limited palette. So even if you're a beginner and new to watercolour painting, you'll find that this will boost your confidence and give you a painting that you can be proud of. So without any further ado, let's dive in. But if you're new here, remember to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any of my future tutorials. Let's get started. So let's get started. As you can see, I've done a very simple line drawing, and if you'd like to know how I do my drawings really quickly, then you may want to click on this drawing hack right here at the top of your screen. I have everything I need here to hand. I've some kitchen towel to dab my brush on and my palettes and paints at the side here, and I will put a list of all the colours that I use in the description box below. So I'm going to apply water to the entire area of the leaf, wet on wet. So wherever you apply the water is where the paint will be. I'm going to use a mixture of olive green and sap green. This can just get dropped in pretty much everywhere. It takes no time at all, just drop it in and then just leave it settle. And you can see how I'm using my brush to smooth out, just scooping it up and dropping it in. The brush I'm using is a number 6 sized spotter, but you can use whatever brush you have. Where the paper has dried, I'm just using a little bit of water to move it into position. I'm just using the tip of the brush to go into the corners. If you haven't got sap green and olive green, don't worry. Use whatever greens you have. Just get the base colour on. I'm just scooping out a little bit here in the centre where I feel it's gone a bit too dark. And then I'm going to let that dry. Now that the paint is dry, we can think about putting a darker colour around the outside here. As you can see, I've added a little bit of a darker green colour to the mix that we already had on the palette. This is Perylene Green. If you don't have Perylene, yet again, use whatever green colour you have, or you could add a little bit of black or Payne's Grey. I've now switched my brush to a smaller size. This is a number 4 size spotter. This particular one comes from Jackson's, but any brush will do. Once again, we're going to paint wet on wet with plain water. This time, I'm going to do it in smaller sections. Wet on wet gives a nice kind of blurry effect to the paint. And you can see I'm only going halfway down here. I'm not going to take it all the way because by the time I get to the bottom section, it will be dry. So picking up the pigment and just dropping it in. I tend to go to the pencil edge on the outside of the painting first because that's going to be a harder edge, and you can see how it's naturally blurring into the area that I've applied that paint, the water, like this. And that gives it the softest edge that we need to come into this part here, where it's lovely and soft and blurry. And it's nice and dark towards the outside, and just let it blur and do its thing. I'm going to do the rest in time lapse for you. So the paint has now dried, and I have here a flat synthetic brush, and it's a number 2 size. This one's from Rosemary & Co, but you can use any flat soft brush that you have, and I'm using this just damp, cleaning it in the water and just taking all the excess water out with my kitchen towel. Where you can see the 2 colours together here, I'm using the tip of the brush just to merge them together slightly to give them a softer edge. It's a really good way of blending the colours together and softening things through. I have here the same colours that we used for the overall wash, but in a slightly thicker consistency. So we have olive green mixed with a little bit of sap. So I'm going to apply this colour all over the stalk, just painting it on. Before you do this, I ought to mention that your paint has to be dry, otherwise it will just bloom and blur into everything. So right the way to probably 3/4 of the way down the leaf. And then I'm going to clean my brush in the water pat it on my kitchen roll so that it's just damp again, and then just with a damp brush pull down the paint like this, and that gives you a lovely soft edge. So I'm going to actually pick up some more of the initial wash and just apply this to the very tip here, and using the same method, pull it down, cleaning my brush, patting it on the kitchen towel, and then just blending that through. Really, really simple. So now going back to this little wash we have here, working through bit by bit. All we need to do is where the pencil lines have been applied, using the paint, we can pop it in around each pencil line to create a negative space here. The negative space will effectively become the vein in between each of these little parts here. Leave a gap and take it into that colour. So I'll do that again for you. Right down to the pencil line, leave a gap and take it into that colour, and I'll do the rest of this on time lapse. Now what I want to do is just add some plain water, and don't be frightened to do this, it has to be dry. I'm just going to apply a plain water glaze, and by glazing I just mean applying colour on top of another colour, in this case plain water, over the entire thing. And if you're nervous about painting in watercolour, this is probably going to worry you a little bit, but trust me, what this will do, it will blur everything together and we can start to build on the leaf. It really, really does make a difference, and it will increase your confidence as a painter. Because I'm self-taught, this technique was developed by accident. I found at the very beginning of my painting, when I didn't know more about watercolour, the painting looked very disjointed and I became really discouraged about how it looked. So by adding a plain water glaze like this, I found that it looked better as I worked through, and it also gives everything a lovely soft edge. What you're seeing me doing here is using the flat brush. I went outside the pencil line, and just by using that flat brush you can tidy up any edges. I'm going to let that dry completely, and then we can start to dive in with the detail. I've mixed a puddle of Perylene Green and either olive or sap, it doesn't matter. This time it's a lot thicker. You can see as I'm moving it around with my brush here, there's plenty of water in it to make it gloopy, but still movable. It doesn't need to be a dry mix. And what I'm going to do is, by using this colour on my number 2 size brush, I'm going to paint around the colours that are already there. So first of all, using a paintbrush to the outside edge like this, and I'm putting this first of all to the pencil line like this. You're just following the pattern that you've made, so don't worry about getting it too accurate. And cleaning my brush, patting it on the kitchen towel so that it is just damp, and then blending it out into that beautiful pattern that we've already created. And I'm just wiggling the brush with the residual colour that is on there and just tapping it here and there just to give it a nice soft edge. So I'm picking up the colour that's there, wiggling it into the softer areas, picking it up, wiggling that brush and just pulling it like that. With this little leaf, you can, where you have the negative painting, you can take your colour around that if you want to, just to enhance it a little bit like this. Because we've already got those lines there, we can follow that around. I know that very often people are worried with watercolour that you have that if you put too much on it can go muddy, if you want to go really dark it can look muddy. Not if you paint in a really gentle application method. So this is really simplifying it. You can see here where the vein comes all the way down the central part. I'm going around that again, negatively painting around it to create the shape of it. Just blending it through. And I'll do the rest of this in time lapse. And you can see I have some colours on my palette. Again, same mix as this one, Perylene Green with olive and or sap, it doesn't matter. And I've also got a little separate puddle here of Sap Green, and I'm going to add to this a tiny bit of any purpley tone to make it a kind of browny green colour. Okay, just a little bit of magenta added into this colour, or purple, and this colour here, using the tip of my brush, we're going to look at the stalk at the top. I'm applying this wet on dry, cleaning my brush, patting it on my kitchen towel and just using the brush in a dabbing motion. I'm not spreading it everywhere, just here and there, like that. And then you can mix these two together, bringing it down the stalk as before. Now, because we've already done the stalk wash once already, we can follow yet again the template that we have in place. So halfway down, just over halfway down, and I'm going to put little bits of different colours here and there just to give it a little bit of realism. You don't have to do this. Cleaning my brush, just spreading that down like that, and you can see yet again how that's really enhanced that central vein and given it that lovely blur. And I'm using the tip of my brush again just to pull out paint from this little area here, and I'm not using any paint at all. It's just the residual paint that's on the brush from before. You see where that central vein is where we just applied? I'm just pulling it out with a damp brush to these little negative areas here around the veins to enhance them. Damp brush, pulling it out, and as you're pulling it out, work around these central areas, and this gives you really good practice for giving you brush control and colour control. And carry on in this vein. See what I did there? In this vein. Right, and I'm going to do it in time lapse. So you saw me adding a little bit more pigment here because when I was pulling it out of the central vein, the paint was dry, and that's the only reason I did that. So let's bring this to its conclusion. Using your brush, go around the outside of the edge of the leaf by picking up the pigment and enhancing everything that we've done. And we can go through it again, the same process, because what you're doing by using this repetitive process, you're learning how to create this sharp edge and the blurry bits at the same time. Again, with the residual paint that's on my brush, once again enhancing these little veins and maybe just doing a few flicks like this, as a stippling motion here and there. You don't have to go everywhere with this. I'm going to just add a little bit more Perylene to that. You can see how lovely and thick this mix is now. And once again, it's the same process now. We're just going over that template wash bit by bit, just by circling it around like this. And then the outside edge here and there, just picking up that lovely darker green, sharpening that outside edge. And that is pretty much it. You can play around with it a little bit more if you want to enhance here and there. So I'm now going to go back to my number 6 brush that I used at the beginning and glaze over again. If you do decide that you're going to be brave enough to merge your colours together in this way, what you will find when watercolour dries, it retracts a little bit. You may get a little bit of a tide mark going through. Keep an eye on it and just use your damp brush to push those colours very, very gently together with a really, really light touch. Using the tip of the brush to push the colour into the pencil line that was once there that we now can't see because we've used those beautiful colours to merge together. And that is the finished painting. So thank you for watching. I really hope that you found this video helpful, and if you enjoyed this one, you may also want to watch this one where I will show you how to paint this really loose style watercolour painting. So thank you for watching, and until next time.